Honorable members, are there any apologies to this meeting?
Madam Speaker, the Chief Whip was still trying to connect. So she's on the platform yet. She had difficulties.
Okay. She has difficulties.
Yes, ma'am, but we're trying to assist there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Honorable, so are there any other apologies other than the fact that the Chief Whip is coming in late? Mr. Khan, so are there any other apologies?
Madam Speaker, I think Honorable Ndombela had submitted an apology. We're just trying to look for that confirmation. That's all that I had.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Honorable members, may we then proceed to look at the agenda? Are we happy with the agenda? Or are there any other additional matters we would like to put on the agenda?
We are happy, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. Happy?
Not happy, Madam Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Kalipi.
Even if it's not going to be part of the agenda, get a clarity in terms of that motion that was withdrawn of the Secretary.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Kalipi. You will receive an explanation. Any other? So, can somebody move for the adoption of the agenda?
Sheikh Imam moves.
Thank you, Sheikh Imam, Honorable Sheikh Imam. Honorable member, may we now proceed to consider the minutes of the last meeting? Thank you very much, honorable members. Are we happy with the minutes? Can someone move for the adoption of the minutes?
Swart moves. Good morning, Speaker.
Second.
Thank you, Honorable Swart, and Honorable Lechisa seconds. Thank you very much. Now we proceed to deal with matters arising out of the minutes. Now, one of the matters which I require the committee to brief us on, is there any other matter now arising on the matter of the Electoral Act? Dr. Dao or Mr. Kaso?
Ma'am, Speaker, there was a break there, ma'am. Were you asking about the Electoral Act, ma'am?
Yes, the actual act. Or is it going to be presented again?
Advocate that will present when we deal with committees, ma'am, except to just indicate still that the Constitutional Court has not yet made a determination on our request for extension. So the matter is still before the court, the Constitutional Court, but Advocate that will deal with what the committee is busy with at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, there is an item there on a matter which has just been raised by Honorable Mkalipi on the appointment motion which should have been moved yesterday. Honorable members, I am sure if you look at number 8 of the minutes, will you please go to number 8 of the minutes, page 3? Page 3, number 8. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Go back. Consideration of draft parliamentary program. I think honorable members, yes, are aware that I did brief the team here, the programming committee, that yesterday we would have presented the motion to appoint Mr. Kolile George as the Secretary of Parliament with effect from the 1st of June. However, honorable members, as you can see below that paragraph, somewhere it says the Deputy Speaker also announced that the Speaker had acceded to a request from General Bantu Olomisa on behalf of opposition parties for a meeting with the Speaker on Wednesday, the 25th. So we had a meeting yesterday morning on the 25th with all the opposition parties which were represented, and there we had a whole range of issues to discuss. Amongst others was the matter of the motion itself. It would seem some of the heads of leaders of political parties were not aware of the motion which was scheduled for yesterday, which was put on the agenda for yesterday. Which is a matter I would like to raise here, honorable members, to the programming committee. That all members who are in the programming committee come from political parties. And anyone who sits in the programming committee, I expect that people will then give a feedback to the leaders of their parties. What I up yesterday is that not all of us who report back to leaders of political parties. The reason why I'm saying this is that an impression was conveyed to me that people read about it from the media, when in fact the matter had been reported here at the programming committee. But not only that, I also am aware that the Chief Whips Forum did discuss this matter. And I want to say this is a matter of concern on my side, because all of us in the programming committee, I would imagine we are representing the political parties which put us here in Parliament, and therefore we have an obligation to go back and report to both our caucuses and to the leaders of our parties. So I do want to make an appeal to all of us at this point, honorable members, that we should do exactly that on all of the matters which we discuss here. And in addition, this matter has actually, we've just deferred it to next week. We are having another meeting with the leaders of opposition parties on Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock. And I am hoping that Wednesday we will be able to have this matter on the agenda of Parliament and that this motion will be passed. Yesterday, I decided that I defer the matter because it was clear to me that amongst political leaders of political parties, there was lack of information and that I needed to clarify certain things to them. Equally, in the panel which had interviewed Mr. George, may I just remind you that members who were part of that panel, again, were representing political parties. We are nonetheless, we've just decided to defer it to next week. So next week, I'm hoping that we will continue with this motion. I was just making that point, honorable members, and I'm making a plea to all of us that when we receive information at this forum, it's not all leaders of political parties who are part of the National Programming Committee. The same applies to the whippery. So all whips, because that's where issues get discussed, by the time they come to the Programming Committee, those matters have been thoroughly discussed and processed by the Chief Whips Forum. I do want to make a plea to all of us that even there, the whippery should report to the leaders of their political parties in the same way that I expect that when people come out of the Programming Committee, that people will report to leaders of political parties, so that I'm not finding myself in a situation where political parties, leaders, are actually in limbo and are not aware of some of the decisions which we may have taken here at this meeting. So that was Honorable Kalipi. In short, that is the reason why we deferred the matter. But we will proceed with this matter next week on Wednesday in the House. Thank you very much, honorable members.
Honourable Speaker, it's Tasha. My hand is up. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, sorry, I'm really sorry. Honorable Natasha Mazzoni.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my leader was one of the leaders who was with you yesterday and who did not have all the information and required more information. I had a very long subsequent chat with my leader, and I've also had subsequent chats with leaders of chief whips of some of the other opposition parties. And the problem arises in this, Madam Speaker. Before you became Speaker, and this issue sat before the committee that did the we were still to receive information regarding the salary structure, regarding further information, and we were also promised a pack that we would get with the information of all of those who had submitted their CVs to the multi-party caucus. Now, that information was never received, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that not even yourself was aware yet of what the salary would be of Mr. Krulia George, should he be the successful candidate elected next week on Wednesday. So I think that there was an element of confusion regarding what information was missing. Myself and Ms. Riwe Gwarube were waiting for that information to come through before we briefed our leader, and we expected that information to come through during the course either of the weekend or on the actual day of the meeting. But we still are none the wiser as to the salary expectations, the work expectations, and very pertinent information that we require to take to our caucus. So with the humblest of respect, Madam Speaker, I apologize for not having given my leader the information that you've asked us to make sure that they have. But we were genuinely waiting for further disclosures to be made so that we could make a decision as a caucus management once we'd seen the salary structure and also the term structure. So if that information could please be passed on to us as a matter of it will make it much easier for us, especially today, considering its caucus. We will be able to discuss the issue with a full caucus, not just the caucus management, and there shall be no issues going forward. But I've heard your plea to make sure that we report back timeously, and I will make sure that even if the information is incomplete, we will report back, and then our leader will be able to explain to you what information, in fact, is still required. Thank you very much. And also, Madam Speaker, thank you very much for giving them.
Thank you, Honorable Mazzoni. If I may say, one, I am having another round of discussions with leaders of political parties on Tuesday, together with Ndate Masondo, chairperson of the NCOP. I will not allow for a situation where salaries, packages of of employees are discussed at a forum of the National Programming Committee. What is important here is for us to understand and appreciate that we have a challenge. We have not had a Secretary of Parliament for the past 5 years. And reason being this toeing and throwing and indecisiveness in relation to appointments of a Secretary of Parliament. So if there's anything that has to be discussed with the political, with regards to the package and everything which shall have been agreed upon, when I meet with them next week, I will raise that matter at the meeting of the programming, at the meeting of the leaders of political parties. And if I may remind Honorable Natasha Mazzoni, you were represented in the panel which interviewed the Secretary of Parliament. You went through the CV, whoever represented you saw the CV, hence the recommendation and even the performance of the candidate. Hence the recommendation from the panel. It's not something that I woke up and sat and decided that this is who I'm appointing and this is the name I'm taking to Parliament. It is a recommendation of a panel which was established by Parliament. I just thought on some of the matters which you have raised, I need to clarify you a bit because you were here and I wasn't here, but I'm quite familiar with the processes at the time. I now proceed to invite Honorable Dr. Connie Mulder.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. Honourable Speaker, I was obviously not part of the meeting yesterday that you've had with the leaders, so I'm not sure exactly what was said. My view is that the concern is not merely the fact that some of the leaders are of the view that they were not informed prior to the motion coming to the House yesterday. I think the problem is a bit deeper than that in the sense that there are some questions in terms of the decision taken. And I must say, I have attended, as far as I can remember, all the Chief Whips Forum meetings. I can't remember that we in the Chief Whips thoroughly discussed this issue. I know there was a panel. I don't know if the panel was involved in the final decision. I don't know. All parties were obviously not represented on the panel, but it didn't come back to the Chief Whips Forum with a report in terms of the process as far as I'm concerned. And the problem is the following, and I think we should understand that it's a sensitive issue. The Secretary to Parliament is, as far as I'm concerned, the equivalent of the Director General of Parliament as an institution. But Parliament is different from other departments. Parliament is the arm of the legislative arm, the head and the institution of the legislative arm of government. And Parliament obviously consists of both the government and the opposition. And because of that, it's absolutely essential that there is some buy-in from everybody involved in the appointment of the Secretary of Parliament. So I understand the situation and the details in terms of this, I understand that as well. But even though the details of the contract, the salary package and all those things do have an impact, and I think there is a need that there is some clarity. We need a buy-in from everybody involved so that we can take Parliament to the position that it should be. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Honorable Mulder. Honorable Papo.
I must say that I was surprised when the meeting was announced informally to us, because the announcement was made last week. No, this issue was never raised even in the NAPC last week. It was a surprise. We didn't know what the meeting was about when it was told to us informally. Now that we've announced it, is very funny because how do we work? I mean, even in the Chiefs Forum, issues are discussed. The dissent is not raised even there. Dissent is not raised in the APC. It's then quietly raised outside the structures. Meetings are arranged. And I also want to understand, should we have complete consensus on the appointment of the Secretary to Parliament or a Secretary to NA, Secretary to NCOP, things like that? Because I think that this kind of working, it creates a problem in terms of why do we meet in the Chiefs Forum? Why do we have an NAPC if issues are not raised? I can understand because people wanted to raise salaries and things like that. Maybe they didn't want to raise it here. But it at least in the Chiefs Forum, because it's a closed meeting, if there were concerns about these issues we are now being told today, and they were never raised even in a closed meeting, why do we have, because I thought in the Chief Whips Forum, that's where we raise issues, we try to agree as people who have responsibility to ensure that Parliament in the National Assembly runs effectively. But as you say, you're going to have a meeting. I'm just surprised that it happened this way. We have a Chief Whips Forum, and then it means that and the NAPC, if you look at the minutes, the announcement was made there. Not even a warning that we're going to request a meeting with the Speaker or the Chief Whips, just generally being informed, and people who sit there. It just creates an environment which is like an ambush kind of an environment.
Thank you, Honorable Papo. You are correct to say it was an ambush, because when I went to the meeting, if I may clarify that this now that you're raising the matter, otherwise I would not have presented it here. I went to the meeting to discuss two things which I had been invited to discuss with the leaders, and that is one, the Mpati report and the processing of the Zondo report. But when I arrived at the meeting, there were 5 other items on the agenda, namely the oversight model, questions to the minister, matter of the appointment of the Secretary of Parliament, matter of the secret ballot, and then physical sittings of Parliament. So obviously, as the executive authority, both myself and Honorable Masondo attended the meeting. We then had to respond to the issues which were raised at the meeting. And of course, on the matter of the Secretary of Parliament, what really came out, honorable members, is one, that most of the leaders of the political parties were not aware that this matter would serve in the chamber yesterday. Everything else, the issues of the package and so on, were matters which were the last issues to come out as we were discussing the matter. The first issue was the principle that the matter had not been discussed with the leaders of political parties. And I therefore, when the proposal was made for us to defer the issue, I then requested the honorable members that if we defer it for a week to allow for that discussion on Tuesday between ourselves as the executive authority of Parliament and leaders of political parties. So that's where it is, honorable members, and I wish to close this item at this point on that note.
Please, Honorable Speaker, our hands are up. Please, Honorable Speaker. Our hands are up, Honorable Speaker, because we don't want to be taken for a ride here.
Okay, you will not be taken for a ride. Let me allow Honorable Natasha Mazoni, lower your hand. You've raised your point on this matter. I'm now allowing Honorable Wahube, followed by Honorable Majodina.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I think
Speaker, I'm the sponsor of this item, and my hand
is also up, Honorable Speaker Shaky Ma'am, and it's also
Nessa Mama Kwangwa, please.
Okay, you, Honorable Kwangwa. Allow me to follow the list which is here now. And I really want to make a plea that we do not have a prolonged discussion, honorable members, on this matter. I now allow you, Honorable Wahube, followed by Honorable Majodina, Honorable Lisuma, Honorable Mabayomzi, Honorable Singh. For now, those are the names I have. Then, of course, then there will be 3 other names below that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Honorable Wahube.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I think the matter of the opposition party leaders is actually in the minutes of the past meeting. It was, to Honorable Papo's point, it was announced that the meeting was requested by Honorable Holomisa. And so I think it wasn't an informal announcement. It was in fact made here. But I think for the purposes, I've heard you, Speaker, and you narrating the issues around the meeting yesterday and the issues raised there. But I think that's for the purposes of moving forward, now that the matter has been deferred for about a week, can I make a suggestion that while you will be meeting with the party leaders next week, that we just get an understanding, while you don't want to discuss some of these matters in the NAPC, I think that the chief whips at least have to get an understanding, because the people who were on the panel were simply told that an offer had been made and that it was thus accepted. There was still no clarity on what basis and on what conditions that offer was accepted by the said candidate. And I think if we are just to get that clarity as we head towards next week, then I think that the hurdle will be removed then, and we can deal with the matter in Parliament, and you can deal with the matter with the party leaders next week, Tuesday. Because at the moment, there isn't any clarity on, and there's competing reports that we can't unknow or unsee, Speaker, in the public domain about the fact that, you know, there's competing reports about what is actually happening with the offer and the acceptance. Thank you. That's all from my side.
Thank you, Honorable Kwahube, and I want to repeat that I will not put the report here in this meeting of the programming committee. If anything, I would rather, if it is absolutely necessary for us to do that, take that matter to the meeting of the chief whips, or even wait for the meeting of the. I've never heard anywhere where matters of packages, this, that, why that, being discussed in the public. This is not my package. This is a package which belongs to a person who's being appointed in Parliament. And maybe later on, once we've agreed with all the negotiations and we've appointed the person, you may want to call on us to account for salaries which we give to all members of the Executive of Parliament. But one thing I did say is that we will, as the executive authority, we will not act irresponsibly. We will not act irresponsibly. And what is important right now is for us to get a Secretary of Parliament. We cannot continue with a Parliament which does not have an accounting officer, which has a person who is currently, unfortunately, acting, and who had not been offered the job at the point before the advert came out. And unfortunately, honorable members, this is the situation we find ourselves in. Parliament has a lot of challenges, and it is even worse after the fire. Parliament has serious challenges, and therefore it is our responsibility. And by the way, members ask here all the time, why are we not having a Secretary of Parliament? When are you appointing a Secretary of Parliament? So we have an obligation as the executive authority to move on and appoint a Secretary of Parliament. I will now take Lesoma, followed by Honorable Nabayoms. I'm sorry, Honorable Pemi has just stepped out for a minute. Honorable Lesoma, Honorable Lisuma, Honorable Kwakwa, Honorable Kalipi, then Honorable Machotila.
Sorry, Chief, my hand has been up. Honorable Speaker, my hand has been up for a while. I think I didn't see it, so check him.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Imam Sheikh and Honorable Singh. In that order. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, and good morning, honorable members and colleagues, and your good self, Honorable Speaker. I totally agree and understand your frustration. It's well understood from where I'm seated, regardless of the rationale that is being advanced in this meeting. Chair, Honorable Speaker, we agree that the matter was announced as an announcement, but the details were never finished. That in terms of the various political party leaders will have a meeting with them, which is within their, even Honorable Holomisa, within their rights to do so, time to engage with the EAs, which is very progressive. However, it must be registered very strongly, Chair. If you are giving a letter with agenda items, you are giving because you have to prepare for that meeting. But if there are additional matters, then it becomes a different story. I watched the interviews of the constitutional judge, and there is something that if I'm going to raise other issues that are personal, although this one is not personal, I'm just making an example of this one, you should have been given an opportunity to be aware so that you can prepare yourself in terms of responding, so that you don't contradict yourself in the near future. I'm raising the issue of that. The shopping list that you were given in a meeting, you were not finished with. Secondly, Chair, the parties that were represented in the interviewing panel, I don't, and I guess we don't need to get the details how they conducted their interview processes because they had enough support and all that. But no one in this meeting now using this opportunity that says that they were denied the right to say moving forward in terms of when the preferred candidate is confirmed, and then they must also be given information in terms of the packages and all those things. And I don't think we are going to start it today. We're in the Chief Whips Forum, even in this platform, discussing those issues. And I'm saying for me then, we must follow be clinically thorough in the processes when we adopt the processes, and then don't change in the process when the final process has been finalized and it's about to be implemented. Then you raise and you advance other issues. For me, where I'm sitting, Chair, it says they're demanding that we must fill up all the critical vacancies, but they will put brakes when we're about, because they will raise any other issue so that we get humiliated and embarrassed that we are not decisive, we are not implementing and taking the operations and the management of Parliament seriously. This position is very important for me, Chair. And I will request that you do what is right and we fill this vacancy as soon as yesterday. The very last one, Chair, is that I'm not too sure what members are doing here. Do they want to liquidate the Chief Whips Forum, which is a closed session where we take each other in confidence, or they want the various political party leaders who are not necessarily sitting in the Chief Whips Forum, then they need to replace us. It must be told, Chair, so that we know what matters should be dealt where, and when the overriding happens and what informs that. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Lisuma. Honorable Mkhalipi, Honorable Imam Sheikh, I'm tempted not to allow you, Honorable Member, to speak because you were part of the meeting yesterday with the political parties.
Chair, you said I was next, but anyway. So am I after Honorable Mkhalipi now?
It's the reason why I'd like to speak, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable members, Honorable Kwak, I find now we can do please don't do that. Now, Honorable Kwakwa, followed by Honorable Mkhalipi, then Honorable Singh.
No, Speaker. I thought I was after Honorable Usoma. That's why I spoke. But anyway, thank you, Speaker. I think, colleagues, we are complicating a relatively straightforward matter here. Why am I making this point? Is that Honorable Mazone right at the beginning said we're still waiting for some information pack to be made available to us so that as parties we can be able to make an informed decision on this matter. I do think even Honorable Kwahube, in fact, last week, indirectly cited this lack of information in the very same meeting. She even proposed a different kind of process to say maybe it should go to the financial, the Committee on the Financial Management of Parliament, and probably out of that we're going to get a report of some kind. We do need to be brought into your confidence, because there's no way, for an example, that we can be blindsided on issues that have to do with the conditions of service, even in that closed meeting. that relate to the appointment of the Secretary to Parliament. As people who are part of the political leadership of Parliament, and as people who are members of Parliament, we should be brought in to take it into your confidence rather about every aspect, including the ones that we're not going to agree upon, because sadly, we're not going to agree on everything unless we feel that whatever is being proposed and put on the table meets our requirements. So the point I'm making is, yes, perhaps what we require is to, as a suggestion, maybe we should ask the chief whip of the majority party to convene a special chief whip, because if we're scheduling, it's going to be scheduled for next week, Wednesday. 10 o'clock next week, Wednesday, for the Chief Whips Forum might be a bit too late to try and have a proper discussion on this issue. It's just a suggestion. Maybe that's what we should do, have a special Chief Whips, get a full report about this matter so that we can take it back to our caucuses and then map the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kwakwa. The next on my list, Honorable Mkalipi, then Honorable Singh.
Okay, no, thank you very much, Speaker. I agree with the latter speaker, because this matter is becoming very complicated at this platform. And I don't know why Speaker seems as if he's fighting, because this matter, I raised this matter because yesterday we thought it was going to be processed in Parliament, and surprisingly it was withdrawn. Hence, I wanted to check what happened. But the fact was my understanding, which I agree that this matter must be deferred back to the Chiefs Forum, which is a closed meeting, is a salary gap between SALGA and Parliament. So I think leaders here wanted to know if Parliament have taken a decision to ensure that what the candidate was earning in SALGA is going to be matched here in Parliament. And the second point that I want to make, Speaker, is that, you know, a person who is going to be a secretary to Parliament must enjoy all political parties' support. So that's why this matter comes as if we, all of us here, have an interest. But I take a suggestion that, no, let us have especially Chief Whips Forum to discuss these matters of concern in order for all of us as party leaders, as Chief Whips, to have the same understanding. And when it comes to next week, to be placed in the order paper, all people who are political leaders who are Chief Whips have one understanding on this matter of Secretary to Parliament. I agree with you, Speaker. It has been 5 years. And there's a vacuum, there's been a vacuum. And the acting secretary to Parliament has been acting to that position. So now it's high time to fill that position. Generations on the day where we are going to say our political position on the candidate itself, but the institution needs a secretary to Parliament. The second thing, Speaker, I think the Chief Whip of the ANC, because we did talk about this point yesterday, that we are to meet with you as a new speaker, as a new Speaker of Parliament in the institution. So we still have to raise some of the concerns, because there's a lot of things in this institution called Parliament that need your guidance and your view, a very robust and open engagement in order for us to have an understanding of what is happening in the institution itself. So I agree, Speaker, maybe we can suffice to say that, no, let us go back to the Chiefs Forum and to have a special Chiefs Forum regards to this matter, because if this matter is going to be tabled on Wednesday, it means we are not going to have sufficient time to engage on the matter. Thank you very much, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kalipi. Honorable Singh.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I hope I'm clear, because I'm in an area where connectivity is not too good. But Honorable Speaker, you know, on this matter, there are two issues. One is the fact that there was an interview panel that was set up some 18 months ago, if I can recall, with independent panelists. And the recommendation of that panel was unanimous in that Mr. George was the number one. And then there was a preferred number two. However, after that, the EAs were to have engaged with Mr. George in terms of the salary package. And I think those negotiations took longer than than it should have. And the panel recommended that the number 2 person be appointed. Unfortunately, the number 2 person was then appointed as Director General of another department within government. So the point is here, there was unanimity on the person of Mr. George. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, the issue of salaries is prescribed, and nobody can work outside prescribed salary ranges. If there is a range, even if it's a minister or an EA, a salary package is prescribed and nobody can work outside of that. So from our side, my party has been fully informed, and our mandate is that we support the person that was recommended. However, the salary package and the range will be negotiated by the EA within the prescriptions of what is allowed. We cannot change salaries, midway to suit one person or the other. So I think that is the position, but perhaps the Speaker would want to at some stage indicate, that the negotiations were concluded with this gentleman. He's prepared to take, I won't say a salary cut. Personally, we are not worried about how much he earned before. He earned a lot of money. But if he, as he said in the interview, is prepared to serve the nation within the prescribed package, then I don't think we'll have a problem. But perhaps, Honorable Speaker, you will decide with the chairperson of the NCOP how you want to take forward the issue of the package, knowing full well that one cannot go outside the range that is advertised and prescribed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Singh. Honorable Imam, then last Honorable Machotina. Honorable Imam, I've really taken note of the fact that you were part of the meeting yesterday.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. First of all, allow me first of all to apologize, Honorable Speaker, because we were not aware of the fact that there were political parties represented in the panel when this matter was dealt with, and neither was that brought up when you raised the matter, particularly in the programming committee. So indeed, I think it is the responsibility of those on that panel from respective parties to take it back to their parties. But again, it highlights the plight of smaller parties like us. When we don't have representation there, we never know. And even if we sometimes have a representation, we're not informed. That's the difficulty I think we're having. I think, Honorable Speaker, you also expressed to us the seriousness of what's happening at Parliament, the lack of leadership and things like that, which calls for this matter to be urgently dealt with. Now, my experience on previous panels that I've been in, we've never ever discussed the issue of salary scale or packages at all. We go on the CVs of the prospective candidates, and we do that, and the rest is left to the respective parties to deal with that. So I think, from our side as the NFP, we believe that you need to accelerate this process, given what you have said to us yesterday, now that we have a better understanding of what's happening in Parliament, and bring this matter to finality as soon as possible so that you can have leadership at Parliament that can assist you so that you can function in a satisfactory manner. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Imam Sheikh. Honorable Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Greetings to all my colleagues, the members of NAPC and the staff of Parliament. Honorable Speaker, I think some members are distinious here. The matter was served in the Chief Whip's Forum to an extent where members requested to do declarations. If they had issues that were outstanding, why did they ask about declarations? I think we have to be genuine when dealing with such matters. And surely I agree with other members here that we cannot come and discuss salary here in a public platform. I note the suggestion that let's convene a special Chiefs Forum. But it is important that when members have issues, they must raise issues here. And it is not our responsibility to go and brief their leaders of parties. Each and every chief whip must be able to brief. And we come here, Honorable Mazzoni, to apologize for things that you have not done. for things that you have not raised in the meeting. I think we must not play games here. As the ANC, we support the move that we must get a secretary for parliament as soon as possible. And the reason why this matter was scheduled for yesterday, because this person is supposed to start on the 1st of June, and we agreed that let that be on the program, let that be on the order paper. But now, at the last minute, that was changed. We cannot work like that. We cannot disorganize parliament because of our inability to go and brief our parties. So this must not really be repeated next time. Let's engage in a closed session and raise our issues as we usually do, and find consensus or not, and take the matter, if we are to take the matter to the House and vote. We have been doing that. We are going to do that as well, even on this matter. I support Honorable Singh that really we cannot come and discuss each and every detail. Why did we have a panel then? If we want to discuss each and every detail in the NAPC for that matter, it is just unfair. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chief Whip of the Majority Party. Honorable members, we've now come to the end of this discussion, and this matter will be taken forward. I will continue to interact with the leaders of political parties on Tuesday, and it is my, I'm hoping that on Wednesday, this matter will be on the order paper of Parliament. And if needs be, as has been raised here, the Chief Whip of the Majority Party may want to convene a special meeting of the Whippery, and I have no say on that matter, but she may as well take that decision as proposed here. I thank you, honorable members. I've listened to all of you, and I've noted the concerns raised. Honorable members, we now proceed to deal with the next item on the agenda. And that item, we were dealing with matters arising on the minutes. Is there any other matter arising out of the minutes which requires our attention?
There's a hand from Honorable Swart, ma'am.
Honorable Swart.
Good morning. Good morning, colleagues. The one issue that was part of the minutes was the reference to the WHO treaty, and we did receive a document from Mr. Kaso, which I wanted to thank him for. I just wanted to highlight that there are two issues there. So I don't know, Speaker, if you'd allow me to continue on that very briefly, because I know our time is limited.
Yes. It is a matter arising, Honorable Swart. You may comment on it.
Yes.
Otherwise, also is ready to give us an update on the matter.
Maybe after he's given the update, if it's necessary. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Honorable Swart. Honorable Mr. Kaso.
Madam Speaker, just to indicate that we really have not been able to obtain a document about the treaty on pandemics. But what we do understand is that there are discussions at an international level about such a treaty. And we have been advised that there will be consultations at the appropriate time. But at this point in time, there is no treaty in place on pandemics, and the matter is still under negotiations. That's the information that I have. And that's the information I've conveyed to the honorable members. And we have advised that maybe the Portfolio Committee on Health and the one on International Relations should pursue the matter with a view to obtaining more information. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kaso. I see the hand of Honorable Mazoni.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm very pleased to see the programming of questions to the Deputy President. And just in line with that, I was wondering if there has been any chance to see if the president may be able to come before we close the term to do a question session with us or not, if his availability has been ascertained or not. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mazzoni, and I would want to raise a question to you on that matter, because I have received a letter from Honorable Gwahube proposing that we should schedule a session with the President for questions. And I was wondering if you did discuss this matter at the Chief Whip's Forum, because that in the main is where you discuss all of these issues. This is where you process issues. This is where you engage on these matters. And by the time it comes here, Honorable Lisuma puts it as a proposal in the programming committee. Now, when I received the letter from yourselves, I got very confused, because I would have expected that by the time you write to me, the matter has been discussed. And maybe those who are part of the group may want to clarify the matter. And I call on Honorable Papo, I see his hand.
You see, this is what I was talking about, where we have a discussion, people keep quiet in the Chief Whip's Forum. They then initiate a parallel process. For example, this matter of the president is not a matter rising. It's now raised as a matter rising. We're not even discussing the program. We have not yet even started discussing the program. The second one on matters raised by Mr. Swart. The World Health Assembly has just met. We don't even have resolutions of the World Health Assembly. There is no treaty in place. If you look at the detail of the minute, it's an anticipation of something which is going to happen. There is no discussion, resolution. We were saying we were going to consult the minister and check where things are. The sense I get is that it was like a preemptive strike on the matter. It's put on the agenda so that I don't understand how this is working, you see, because if we're going to continue this way, to ambush each other in the NAPC, we're going to have a problem even on how the functionality of the Chief Whip's Forum is going to be. That letter, we were told about it yesterday in the Chief Whip's Forum, about that matter. It's a problem, but anyway, Mr. Kaso has explained it because that the whole content of the minutes about that issue, it was hinged on the World Health Organization meeting, which had just happened recently. We don't have the resolutions and so on. But I'm just appealing that we need to when we're in closed meetings, let's take each other into confidence and not ambush each other through the NAPC.
Thank you very much, Honorable Papo. Honorable Lisuma, followed by Honorable Boroto.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I think when we adopt the agenda, we must try our level best to locate our issues that we want to raise on the specific agenda item. What Honorable Mazzoni is raising, we were intending to talk to it when we were presenting the program, Honorable Speaker. Reason because it was raised also yesterday. And unfortunately, it was raised in a very unusual way about the letter written to you, and we're expected to respond to the letter that was written to you. My plea, Chair, is that let's go to the when we're dealing with the program, we deal with it. Why I'm saying that, without also repeating myself when at the time I will be dealing with the program, is that the matter of the president, because we are also the public is watching this meeting, we must explain on record once more. It has been raised when we were dealing with the second quarter program, which is about to finish now. And it was reported that if you look at the program, the president, when we're dealing with the budget, he will be appearing before the House. We will, when we deal with the third quarter program, scheduled the appearance of the Honorable President, informed by due processes in terms of the availability of the dates, which means then in the next quarter, the President will also be appearing in the House in a nutshell more or less twice. And it was well understood. It was, if you go to the minutes of the Chief Whips Forum, which is not part of this meeting here, you will see those engagement. Even I think it's the third minutes of this committee also. If you go when we're presenting the programming, such a draft program before this committee, it was lifted up precisely on that score. And nothing has changed. I'm not too sure what makes now to be an issue and an impression created that we don't want to schedule the president to come before the House. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Lisuma. Honorable Muroto.
Thank you. Good morning, Speaker. Thank you very much. Speaker, I'm just worried about the approach that the DA decides to take on this programming committee. We know our mandate as a programming committee. Why is it that there should be matters that are not supposed to be here that are being raised here? Some of the things really is just a waste of time. I've been covered by both Honorable Papo and Mam Lisuma. Please, let's not do that. It's not right.
Thank you very much, Honorable Muroto. Those of you who have spoken, will you please lower your hands because I get confused because they remain on the system here. Thank you, Honorable Papo. Honorable Swart.
No, Speaker, I appreciate the input, and very quickly, this was a matter that correctly should be referred to portfolio committees, and I'm referring to the WHO proposed treaty, but there are two issues there, and that is the amendments to regulations, which is a separate issue. So I abide by the meeting's decision that this should be looked at in an appropriate time in terms of Section 231 of the Constitution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Swart. Honorable Kwahube.
Thank you, Speaker. I think there are now two issues that are being discussed at the same time, but nonetheless, the letter that I'd written to you has now been made reference to. And so I just want to clarify something, that the letter that I've written to you clarifies very detailed that while the president may be coming to the House in order to do the presidency budget vote, Rule 140 of the National Assembly rules states that the president should appear for oral questions in the House once a quarter. And that matter falls firmly within the ambit of the programming committee, which is to essentially determine the program of Parliament. That's why I've written to you to request that, in fact, we satisfy that rule by including a question session to the president. I'm not sure how other accusations are coming out of that, but that is my view, Speaker. And if you could either just make a ruling on that or at least let me know what the situation will be.
Honorable Kwahube, the matter which I have raised here, which has been raised by other honorable members as well, is that it is important that when issues are discussed at the level of the WIPARI, which you are part of, that issues are raised there and that the matters are discussed and processed and agreed to. I know that the WIPARI is not a decision-making process, but it is a body which is there in Parliament consisting of all political parties, which has a mandate of processing issues for purposes of finding one another before matters are even presented to the programming committee. And that is all I'm saying. I have not responded to your letter because I've noted that you are raising a matter which in fact should have been finalized and discussed by the WIPARI. And I hear members of the WIPARI now responding to that. I will now wait for Honorable Lisuma when she presents her program, the program which you've agreed on with Chief Whips, to then talk to the matter. And then we will finalize that matter at that point. Honorable Kwakwa, followed by Honorable Warrenhoff.
No, Speaker, let's wait for the program, the item to be discussed on the program. We'll engage it as you propose. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kwakwa. Honorable Warrenhoff,
Thank you, Speaker, and thank morning colleagues. I'm covered by your remarks that you've just made. It's safe to say that the NA program for the second term has been discussed and approved and agreed to by this very programming committee, as well as the Chief Whips Forum. I agree with your view. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Wolf. Honorable members, are there any other matters? We are still under matters arising from the minutes. Are there any other matters arising from the minutes? If there are none, shall we then proceed to may I invite the committee section, Advocate Dow, to present his...
Thank you, Madam Speaker, honorable members and colleagues. Our report will start on slide number 3. On this slide, Madam Speaker, the PC on Social Development has revised the finalization of fundraising amendment bill because the committee is prioritizing a child amendment bill. The next update is on slide number 4. Yeah, on this slide, the PC on justice is going to schedule further deliberations on traditional courts bill. The committee had briefings yesterday. The next update is on slide number 5. On this slide, as indicated earlier on, PC on social development was supposed to finalize the Children's Amendment Bill on the 18th, but the committee scheduled further deliberations on the 25th and the 1st of June. The next update is on slide number 9. On this slide, it is the issue of Electoral Laws Amendment Bill. The committee initially wanted to finalize the bill on the 17th of May, but the committee is now continuing the deliberations with the intention to have the motion of desirability and further deliberations on the 31st of May. The PC on police finalized the Criminal Laws Forensic Procedure Amendment Bill. The next update is on the slide number 10. On this slide, we just show the 2 bills that have been referred to the committee, PC on Employment and Labor and PC on Communications. The PC on Communications has already scheduled deliberate briefings on South African Post Bank Limited Amendment Bill. Slide number 11. On this slide, the Standing Committee on Finance has completed clause by clause on the bills that are before the committee, and the committee is planning to finalize the report on the 2 bills on the 31st of May. The next update is slide number 12. Yeah, on this slide, PC on Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, together with PC on Employment and Labor, will start with the oversight visit in Northern Cape and Mpumalanga to conduct comprehensive oversight work on living conditions of the farm workers and farm dwellers. The next update is on slide number 13. On this slide, PC on Trade and Industry has finalized the appointment of Chairperson of National Lotteries Commission. The next slide is on slide number 13. On this slide, there are 2 petitions before PC on Transport and PC on Public Works. PC on Transport is going to have deliberations on the 31st of May, while PC on Public Works and Infrastructure will revise the program to include the petition. The next update is on slide number 20. On this slide, Standing Committee on Finance has finalized 2 international agreements yesterday. The reports should find their way on the order paper. This concludes our report, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Advocate Dow. Honorable members, any observations? Honorable Dr. Connie Mulder.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's not specifically with regard to any business in front of any current committee, but it does have to deal with committees. I'm not sure where we should fit that in. I want to ask if we have decided in terms of how we're going to deal with the Zondo Commission. Are we going to create a specific committee? Are we going to create an ad hoc committee? And if so, what would the timescales be? I don't know if we can deal with that or where we should deal with that. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mulder. Mr. Castle.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The approach is as follows, that for matters that need the urgent attention of Parliament, for instance, issues that affect honorable members coming out of the reports, those matters are referred immediately to the relevant committee. So far, it has been the Ethics Committee. And the Research Office is going through all the parts of the reports that are in the public domain, just to process them and arrange them such that when the time comes for matters to be referred to committees, that is able to happen. Now, this committee has discussed that when we get to the time when the final report is released and the implementation plan, that matter will then go to the Rules Committee. The Rules Committee will then make a determination in terms of how the issues must be dealt with, whether they should be dealt with by their respective committees or there should be an ad hoc committee. The Rules Committee will deal with that. But just to summarize, issues that need urgent attention, those will be dealt with even before that. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Mr. Castle. That provides you with the answer, honorable member.
Thank you, ma'am.
Shall we then proceed to entertain the report of the Bills Committee from Dr. Mbata?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Good morning, honorable members and colleagues. Advocate Tau has already covered the report on the Criminal Law Forensic Amendment Bill that is on the order paper for second reading and consideration. With your permission, Madam Speaker, the Bill's Office has prepared a report on the 2022 legislative program as approved by Cabinet. This opportunity, Madam Speaker, will allow the Bill's Office to give a Bill's Office perspective on the executive legislation program submitted annually. I believe the 2022 legislative program has been distributed to the committee with all the other papers of today's meeting. Titled 2022 Legislative Program as approved by Cabinet. On the screen is a brief summary which I shall discuss shortly. But before I go to the summary, Madam Speaker, I want to mention that the reality is that most bills on the LOGB list still have a long way to travel before they can be officially introduced and referred to the committee and then to JTM. Central to this is the interaction between the chief state law advisors and the responsible department or the cabinet. The Chief State Law Advisor's Office provides two preliminary opinions to Cabinet. The first opinion is in respect of the publication of the draft bill for comment, and the later one for the introduction. It is after the latter opinion that Cabinet moved to a position where it could approve the bill for the introduction. So, Madam Speaker, when a draft bill appears on the horizon, there is normally much work to be done before the bill will be certified for introduction. And this lies on the terrain of the executive. It can, and really it does, often take years to complete, which we understand, because if all the executive procedures are not followed, the bill can and will run into problems in committee stage. Even after this process, a committee can still reach a point where it deems it proper to refer the bill back to the department we do have an example that we all know of the state liability bill, which it was introduced as B16 of 2018, and this bill was introduced on the 31st of May 2018. It is also a very real possibility that some of the bills on the list will not reach Parliament, not in this Parliament, nor in the next Parliament. It's almost in the nature of draft legislation. Therefore, the Bills Office has learned to study the program and keep it ready, but until and unless the State Law Advisor's Office certifies the bill for introduction, there's nothing that will happen on our side. Madam Speaker, I will now speak or refer you to the displayed report. Let's start from slide number 2. On slide number 2, it contains a breakdown of the legislation per portfolio. So each portfolio, we've put the number of legislation that it's anticipated to be introduced under that portfolio, which is, it goes back to the total of 69 bills that we are expecting for the year 2022. The next slide, slide number 3, shows the 7 annual finance bills that are introduced in February and in October. 2 of them have already been introduced. The Division of Revenue has been introduced and passed, and the appropriation bill is to be passed in June. And 5 bills are to be introduced with the MTBPS in October. The next slide, slide number 4, presents the general status of bills that are on the list. So on the list, we've got 32 bills that are not yet submitted to the Chief State Law Advisor's Office. And we've got 5 bills that were submitted to the Chief State Law Advisors. And 18 of these bills have preliminary opinions from the Chief State Law Advisors, which were submitted to departments. And then, Madam Speaker, it is important to note that the fact that a draft bill identified as priority does not mean that it will indeed reach Parliament within the time frame predicted, or sometimes not at all. We will give you an example, Madam Speaker. In the 2020 legislative program, big emphasis was placed on the bills that were addressing the gender-based violence. Some of them were from justice, police, and social development. Some of those bills have not reached Parliament yet and maybe never will. The older person bill, it's one of the bills which were part of the legislative program, and this bill has only been introduced this year on the 3rd of May. The next slide, the last slide, Madam Speaker, covers the parliamentary steps before introduction of these bills. So the first step is Cabinet approval and the JR 159 compliance. This rule informs Parliament on a bill approved by Cabinet and allows committees to work out a program and develop a position on the bill. And the next step is the Gazette Notice of Intention to Introduce, which is NA Rule 276. The important one for us as the Bills Office is the 3rd step, which is certification by the State Law Advisor in the NA Rule 279, subsection 2. When this is done, we continue with editing, proofreading, and consultations on the bill. And when all these steps are certified or satisfied, we finally print and distribute the bill and publish for its introduction in the ATC. That's all from this report, Madam Speaker. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mbata. Honorable members, are there any comments? I see the hands of Honorable Papo, followed by Honorable Singh.
Speaker, my suggestion is that the issues with, if in your engagement with the Bills Office or the Secretary to the NA, the issues which the Bills Office have raised, you agree with them, they can be engaged. You can engage them with the leader of government business so that the process is smooth. Because I saw there was an engagement between the Bill's office and our office in terms of the officials there. But some of these issues, if Mr. Kasu has explained them and think they're critical and important, you can then engage the leader of government business on them so that they are taken up on the understanding of Parliament, so that the issues of clarification of exactly when those bills will come in, where the process of each bill is understood. And then the actual time frames for Parliament are then clarified upfront so that we don't end up with a situation where bills are presented in the last quarter of the year, and then Parliament is forced to then speed up those bills. I'm just saying that because at the moment it's just the engagement is happening there. If it can be clarified there, that's good and fine. But if it's not, I think it may be necessary. The same way you had asked for the legislative program, if there are issues, maybe that the officials will need to engage, clarify each other and have an understanding, and then you get a report on each and every bill and the program of Parliament. I thought that could help, because if we wait and then there's the lateness, it can create a problem. But the office is aware, because the Bill's office has been engaging with the officials in the Office of the Leader of Government Business on some of the issues which they have raised now in the NAPC.
Thank you very much, Honorable Papo. Honorable Singh, followed by Honorable Kalipi.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I want to follow in the same vein as Honorable Papo, but put another twist to the tail, in that, Honorable Speaker, I think it's the first time we've had such a long report from the Bill's office, the second part of the Bill's office. And on a number of times, the mention was state law advisors. Now, we as Parliament have the responsibility to ensure that there's legislation on the table that can be enforced so that South Africans can benefit from the enforcement of those regulations and those acts. I think, in addition to what Honorable Papo has suggested, Honorable Speaker, perhaps you need to engage and report back to programming on under whose purview does the Office of the Chief State Law Advisor fall? Is it under the executive? Is it under the Department of Justice, et cetera, so that we can have a more informed debate on these delays? Because, for us to be hearing that legislation could take years and some...
Are you still here, Honorable Singh? I think there's a problem with your network. Okay. We proceed to Honorable Singh. Are you back? Okay. Honorable Mkalipi.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I just want to have an interest in terms of the clarity where Dr. Mbata is talking about some delays on the bills such as GPV from justice and from police. I didn't hear correctly what he's saying, because our interest here as members of Parliament is to see those bills becomes the law in order to intervene on the scourge of the GPV that is taking place in the country. And secondly, Speaker, the 32 bills that she's saying that has not arrived at the desk of the state law. So if we can have a way to get who are those bills, because some of the political parties have also submitted some bills to be processed in Parliament. And the time frame of all these processes, if we can also be helped with to be clarified, in order for us to have a track of what we are also doing as parties, as members.
Honorable Mkalipi. Okay. Honorable Lechisa.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I thought the Dr. Mbata's presentation contains what I think today is material for member induction continuing education material, including public education material about the lawmaking process. But also it includes material that's relevant also for not just as Honorable Papo says, of enforcement, but of evaluation of the impact of the legislation that we pass. Like Honorable Mkalipi, I thought that there were 3 bills that were promised that the president has already signed that relate to gender-based violence. So I thought Dr. Mbata could distinguish between those and those that she said never arrived on the table, for example, because I think that needs clarification. So I'm suggesting that she, with public education, must reduce this material for purposes of induction, for purposes of public education around lawmaking. And these are areas that I know some public school, what are they called, governance schools are interested in educating some of the people who are working around law. It contains very helpful material that we can produce and collaborating with parliamentary communication services. So I'm recommending that we'll follow it after this meeting. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Honorable Nico Shibabu.
No, thank you very much, Speaker. I think we should take note as Parliament that there is something fundamentally wrong with the legislative process that has just been presented now, because the presenter keeps on saying that there's certain legislation that will never ever arrive, and there's certain legislation which is being delayed due to the state chief state law advisor. And the chief state law advisor is basically and essentially the law firm or the legal advisor of the executive. And I don't understand how we get to have Parliament dependent on the executive. And that is the anomaly which has actually defined Parliament majority of the times. I think post-1999, where majority, if not all legislation that is discussed in Parliament is introduced by the executive. But as members of Parliament, we just comment and then the executive says, no, this is a final and everything else. After study groups of the ruling party, that no, let's just go ahead with it. So Parliament is basically useless because it doesn't initiate legislation. Majority of the times, when we introduce legislations, it gets to be delayed or frustrated because it is taken to the executive to comment as to how we should pitch and what should be the contents of what we are trying to say must be law in South Africa. Effectively, Parliament has got no role in lawmaking, and the Constitution obliges us to be the lawmakers. But currently, it is the executive that is making laws for us. I mean, we are just commenting on what laws that they've got to introduce and everything else. There's nowhere in the Constitution or legislation that says that we should first wait for the executive to introduce laws and then comment on that. Committees can introduce legislations, members of Parliament can introduce legislations, but the pattern now thus far has been such that it is the executive that is basically throwing legislation to justify their actions to Parliament, and Parliament just rubber stamps and it goes back as normal. So, and that is entirely problematic. I would think that we'll have to have a far much more deeper discussion on how do we position Parliament as a lawmaking body, as a relatively autonomous institution, because the Constitution envisaged a situation where Parliament will have some degree of relative autonomy to the executive and to the judiciary and everything else, because we've got different functions. But currently, you can't point to any legislation, meaningful legislation, which has been initiated and subsequently passed in Parliament. All of these legislations that we deal with, almost all of them come from the executives. The ones which we try to introduce, they get to be systematically suppressed by the manner in which legislation has been treated thus far. I think we must have to deal with it differently, Speaker. And if we cannot exhaust this in this meeting, we'll actually make a submission ourselves as EFF as to how legislation should be approached much more different to what is the case now. Like on what is separation of powers if we all are going to rely on one legal advisor of the state, of the executive, not of the state, of the executive, on how legislation must be handled and everything else? It's entirely problematic and it must be changed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Shivambu. Honorable Plapo.
As I hear what Member Shivambu is saying, lawmaking in any parliamentary system is not a neutral process. There is a governing party with its own policies. Through its executive, it actually presents policies through bills. So even if there are members' bills, those bills come from a particular political perspective. So to present a view that lawmaking is just a neutral process where members can just develop private members' bills, which many of them come from political parties, is not actually a fair representation of lawmaking. We are represented in Parliament through political parties, even if we're MPs. Political parties have their perspectives, which are reflected even in those members' bills. So that presentation he's saying is going to make, it's very interesting. It's going to be very interesting because he creates an impression of a neutral lawmaking process, which is not correct. Let him present that particular proposal we'll engage in. We are clear about lawmaking. It's not that they were not aware. There are politics in lawmaking because we are represented through a PR system in Parliament. I'm interested to engage that discussion he wants to present and then even talk about the private members' bills which have been presented, which represent political views of various parties, including EFF views on some of those private members' bills.
Thank you, Honorable Papo. Honorable Chisa, you still have a hand. I don't know if it's your hand or...
No, it's a new one, Madam Speaker.
Okay,
Thank you very much. No, Madam Speaker, I was saying that I agree that perhaps the lawmaking process be discussed, that the EFF presents their view of the process, but it is incorrect to suggest that Parliament is useless. It is incorrect that legislation that comes to Parliament is agreed to wholas bolas. The reason we have the requirement for motion of desirability is to hear the political argument for the legislation and whether indeed we agree with it. The executive has been told to go and change the law, even if it came and was accepted by the chief state law advisor. The reason is for providing assurance that what is being brought here has satisfied certain requirements and certain criteria. But it does not in and of itself represent a correct version of things. Parliament must itself undertake its own consultation. This is why the Constitutional Court has said it does not mean because it was consulted by the executive that's adequate. Parliament undertakes its own consultation and members have amended various pieces of legislation to make them consistent as, amongst other reasons, to fulfill the expectation of the parliamentary process, which is based on multi-party, but the majority makes decisions, broadly speaking, of political parties and of members. So I think it is important to recognize that part. And part of the reason I was suggesting this lawmaking process is important, Madam Speaker, is precisely even for us members to understand the process fully on an ongoing basis, because otherwise we communicate and convey wrong impressions about the lawmaking process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. I hope that is understood, and that maybe if there is a need for a further engagement on the matter as proposed by Honorable Papo, that will be brought forward, and maybe we can use the Chiefs Forum to engage on the matter. I'm sure that you all agree, and if it is agreed, honorable members, so that we clarify one another and clarify the issues which have also been clarified here by the Honorable Deputy Speaker. On that note, honorable members,
I've raised my hand, Speaker. I've raised my hand again.
Okay, I don't want a dialogue, Honorable Shivambo.
Yeah, it's definitely not a dialogue. It's definitely not a dialogue. But the fact of the matter is that we have, as the EFF introduced, presently more than 20 different legislations, and the administrative capacity of Parliament to give proper legal advice and meaning to that has been lacking. And they did write to us that we do not have the enough capacity to do so. We have to rely on the executive's legal advices in terms of what happens. And I then kept on asking as to where then do we separate these powers if everything else that we say should be legislation has to depend on the legal advice and the drafting services and legislative drafting services of the executive. There is no separation of powers. It's of course convenient for the ruling party because you think that in Parliament you are leading and then the executive are leading, then you just then blur the line which was purposefully created, that Parliament should pass legislation, the executive of course must be overseen through that particular legislation. And that doesn't preclude the legislation introducing some legislation, but it can't exclusively be the legislation that introduces legislation in South Africa without Parliament given the necessary capacity and space to introduce and engage on legislations. When was the last time a committee bill was introduced and adopted in Parliament? When was the last time a private member's bill was introduced and adopted in Parliament? All the legislations come from Pretoria, and few minute changes are made on those legislations that they go back almost wholly as they were introduced in terms of what happens. And that doesn't, it erodes the purposeful intention of separating the three institutions of the judiciary, the executive, and Parliament. And those are some of the things. And of course, as we've committed, we will provide a far much more deeper critique of the current framework and practices and manifestation of lawmaking in South Africa and illustrate the fundamental flaws that define it because of the triumphalism that defines the ruling party, that thinks that because currently it's in office in both sides, it can do as it wishes. And because of going to a different trajectory, we might need to take a different approach of lawmaking so that we have got a far much more balanced system. Thanks.
So what is your proposal, Honorable Shivambu?
Madam Speaker.
I think, Speaker.
Honorable Shivambu, can you put a proposal so that we can...
the proposal is that we can either in the next meeting or the meeting after next, we can then submit a submission in terms of what we think should be the role of Parliament in lawmaking. And then, of course, we'll provide a scientific data critique of what has been happening with legislation up to so far. And then we can present a framework in the next meeting or the meeting after next.
Okay, I'm not sure, though, that we can have that kind of engagement. Because that, to me, what you are raising, in fact, is the kind of engagement that sort of That's more like a workshopping one another and engaging until we agree on the matter. So I do want to propose that the party deals with the matter, or that we agree on a day when we will have just that item on the agenda for a discussion amongst ourselves so that we clarify one another on the rules. Is that okay, honorable members? Are you satisfied, Honorable Shivambu, with that proposal?
No, that's fine. We can have that, and you can actually even request the legal office in Parliament to come and present the statistical data of the laws that have been passed as to who originated them and the number of private legislations which we have taken to the legal office which couldn't be processed on time, so that we've got the exact data. We don't even have to give that. The legal office in Parliament can provide that, and then we'll speak ourselves in terms of what are the proposals moving forward.
Thank you very much, Honorable Shivambu. Honorable Kwakwa. And followed by Honorable Roto.
I'm covered, Speaker. Sorry, I'm covered. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kwakwa. Honorable Roto.
No, thank you. Awaiting what the EFF will be presenting, can we separate it from the programming committee? As the Deputy Speaker, when he started to speak, he spoke about the trainings that should be scheduled. I think that is a separate matter. We can't discuss it on this programming committee. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Honorable Moroto. As proposed, honorable members, that this matter, what Honorable Shivambu is actually proposing is more of a workshop, so that we engage and understand and even receive a report from the legal team of Parliament. And once we have understood one another, and maybe then we can come to the programming committee. For now, if we agree that the matter should come to the programming committee, what it means, in fact, is that we will not discuss the program of Parliament, and that will, in fact, focus on the issue of legislation. So I will request the office of Mr. Kaso, together with the legal team, to prepare for such a discussion, not in the programming committee meeting, but in a different forum where we will help one another understand where we stand in the matter. Thank you very much, honorable members. I now invite Honorable Lisuma to take us through the draft parliamentary program.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker and colleagues. May we go right on top on the international diary, please? Honorable Speaker, may I respectfully remind this meeting that we have, beginning of the year, we adopted a framework which did highlight important compliance activities of Parliament, and it was adopted accordingly. Moving forward then, each and every program, draft program that gets presented, either at a Chief Whip's forum for inputting, and then at this forum where it's supposed to be for endorsement, it does take note of that. For completeness of today, Chair, may I then present this draft program before this House, starting with the international calendar events. On the 30th of May of this year, there will be a webinar, a fora sitting, which under the theme, Making the Water Pie Bigger, Water Technology vis-a-vis the Meta Crisis in the Middle East, which will be on the 30th of May, 2022. Then the second point, our calendar activity, which will take place on the 30th, on the same day also, is IPU's Empowerment Series of Capacity Building Activities for the Young Parliamentarians, around the second briefing on health and nutrition matters. Third one, calendar point activities, IPU Information Seminar, which will be held in France on structure or functioning of the IPU, which will be on the 31st of May to the 3rd of June 2022, which will be a hybrid sitting. Fourthly, the PAP Southern Africa Regional Caucus Strategy Meeting, which will take place on the 31st of May up to the 3rd of June 2022. Fifth one is the 52nd CPA Africa Regional Conference and AGM, which will take place on the 3rd to the 9th of June in Freetown in Sierra Leone. Sixthly is IPU Information Seminar, which will be held in France on structure and functioning of the IPU, which will be commencing from the 31st of May to the 3rd of June in hybrid sitting in Geneva. On the seventh one will be the 49th session of the Steering Committee of the Parliamentary Conference on the WTO, which will commence on the 13th of June in the afternoon in Geneva in Switzerland. And then the eighth one is IPU Global Conference of Young Parliamentarians under the theme Young MPs for Climate Change, which will start on the 15th to the 16th of June 2022 in Egypt. And the ninth one will be the Judicial Service Commission sitting, which will be on the 20th of June 2022. The last one for now, Chair, is the meeting of the Non-Aligned Movement NAM Parliamentary Network, which will commence on the 30th of June to the 1st of July in Baku, in Azerbaijan. That's the calendar and the diary of the international activities and programs. We are now today, Chair, on this week 16 of the National Assembly program, draft program, because I'm presenting it. I will deal with the other matters which are more narrative at the end so that I don't cause the same confusion that I nearly caused last week. I must also take you into confidence, Honorable Speaker, that it has been presented before the Chief Whip's Forum yesterday. We are on Thursday sitting here now at the Programming Committee, and then in the afternoon, which is for most to highlight, because the Multi-Party Women's Caucus takes place once a month in the last week of the month, is sitting as we speak now, Chair. And then in the afternoon, we'll have 2 sessions of mini plenaries on virtual platform from 14 hours until 17 hours. The first one, I would like to just to take through the committee for completeness, that the first subject matter for discussion is sponsored by Honorable Nyonzo under the theme Establishing Shared Values in the Paralyzed Device Society that could cement a common nationhood and bring a sense of belonging to the most vulnerable, which is a debate for 90 minutes. Followed by the consideration of the report of the Portfolio Committee of Higher Education on their oversight report on to the University of Stellenbosch. And it's followed by the same committee report on the Commission on Gender Equality report on follow-up hearings that they had on gender transformation and tertiary institutions. The second mini plenary, Honorable Speaker, will be, and honorable members will be also followed same framework of this subject matter for discussion sponsored by Honorable Yabu, addressing under the theme, addressing inequality to advance socio-economic rights of all and have no one left behind, leave no one behind, my apology, which is equally 90 minutes. Then will be followed by committee reports, which is the second one will be trade and industry report on public protectors report on a systematic investigation into allegations of illegal conversion of goods carrying Toyota Quantum panel vans into passenger carrying minibus taxis to transport members of the public for reward. Followed by a consideration of the report of the Agriculture, Land and Reform and Rural Development on their oversight to Perishable Products Export Control Board and District 6, Western Cape Province on the 9th of March to the 1st of April 2022. That will conclude the business of today's day, Chair. And then Friday, as the framework indicates, is normally committee day. May we proceed, Chair, to week 17? Week 17, Chair, I will not go to Monday, but I'll quickly go to Tuesday, which then we are coming back after for now concluded our mini plenaries on budget votes debates that it will be on the 31st of May. On Tuesday, on 14 hours, would be a hybrid sitting, which is a standard framework of the proceedings of the day, but probably to highlight for completeness is the second item there, which will be the report from the Committee of Police on public participation criminal law, dated of forensic procedure, which is the Bill 25 of 2021, followed by the criminal law, same, which would be for same committee, then the second reading thereof. And then the fifth point will be the report from higher education, science and technology and innovation, their oversight report. And then there will be decisions of questions of report that will be highlighted. I will just go then down because those ones are more of the same committee reports, but not same reports, but same portfolio committee reports, but followed then the last one, why they are putting in dots and highlighted, Chair. Members, if I may, on this one, Chair, I think it's very important that haven't listened carefully to the input made at the Chief Whip's Forum and also at this committee, programming committee, the last two meetings, that we must ensure as the technical and as the programming team, ensure that the draft program reflects and prioritize all those matters that are below the line, including the bills. Hence, that's why then you've got this scheduled items, Chair. And we have made our level best to ensure that we listen, and we are seeing also practically that we are listening to the counsel that we received in terms of populating the scheduling of items. Chair, I'll move on that because we're still going to have a meeting next week, but I thought I must just say that, hence it reflects like that. Let's go to Wednesday, if we may. Thank you very much. This one, Chair, is the Wednesday, which is a closed session of the Chief Whip's Forum at 10 o'clock, and in the morning till midday, it's a committee sittings. At 15 hour to 17 hour, it's a hybrid sitting. Those are the items that we highlighted, Chair, for completeness. I'll go through them. Is the consideration of the report of Public Enterprises Oversight Report on Transnet Port in Durban, followed by the Portfolio Committee Oversight on visit of Norwood at Tembisa Police Station, Gauteng, and from the 4th to the 5th of March of police, followed by the Water and Sanitation report of their oversight in the Eastern Cape province, and followed by the PC on police on South African Human Rights Commission report on Northwest Provincial Investigative Hearing into the lack of safety and security measures in schools for children with disabilities in South Africa, which I think is very important, that point. May we go to the on Wednesday. On Wednesday, also it's a hybrid one, is the consideration of the report of the PC on health, or National Health Amendment Bill, which is very important, and the second reading thereof. Then we'll receive a PC or COCTA on Disaster Management Amendment Bill, followed by the second reading, and the other one would be the report, consideration for the report for approval of the amendment to the Convention of Physical Protection of Nuclear Material from the Portfolio Committee of Mineral Resources and Energy, followed by Justice and Correctional Services PC amendment to regulations for approval in terms of Section 97 of 2 of the Child Justice Act of 2002 for approval by the House, followed by the consideration for approval of the African Charter on Statistics report from the Public Service and Administration Portfolio Committee. The last one item on that day would be the consideration of annual report of JSC on intelligence for the financial year ending 31st of March 2022, including the period of December thereof. Then Friday is the normal day. May we proceed? Week 18, Chair. Let's start on Tuesday. It's a hybrid. Then we're starting the hybrid sitting of the National Assembly with the debate of Vote 2 of Parliament and consideration of reports of budget votes. And in brackets, we are highlighting that there will be no debates, noting that the mini plenaries, all parties were given space and time to debate on individual votes through the mini plenaries. May we then continue to Wednesday, Chair. I will go quickly now to the hybrid sitting of the National Assembly. I can see here it says that questions to the Deputy President, which is very important in terms of compliance with the rules of the National Assembly, will proceed, Chair, to Thursday. Is the hybrid sitting on debate vote 1, the presidency, where President will be in the House, appearing before the House, because it can't happen without him being there as well. May we proceed, Chair, to Friday, which is resumption of the debate of vote 1, which is the same as the President, which is the following day, Chair, Honorable Speaker and Honorable Members, which the President will be there physically if it's available, but he will be in the House because it's a hybrid sitting, also then responding, which means on that week, I must emphasize, Chair, 2 days the President will be appearing before the House. Week 19. Allow me, Chair, to go to Tuesday, which is the meeting, the National Assembly will start at 10 o'clock, which is very important, worth noting. Then will be consideration of the appropriation on second adjustment appropriation bill and the second reading thereof. May we proceed? Also, the second reading of adjustment my apology, of second adjustment appropriation bill, and followed by the consideration of ST on appropriation bill also, which is more money bills. Let me put it that way, Chair. Let's go to Wednesday. If we may, then it will be the debate of the Youth Month, of the Youth Day, which is 88 minutes, then the House shall rise. But I must say that, Chair, as we indicated last week, which will be from the 20th of June to the 15th of August, will be a constituent period. But it's worth noting that Youth Parliament has proposed, which was presented in the Chiefs Forum, and even last week, to say that from the 20th to the 27th of June, it will be Parliamentary Youth Week, as it were. May I then, Honorable Chair, deal with the silence matters, if I may. We totally agree and prescribe to the rules, in particular of the National Assembly Rule 140, which does direct that the President must appear in the House. Honorable Speaker, you would have observed that in our presentation, we did highlight that the President will be appearing before the House, but those are the two, is the budget vote and the Q&A's one. That matter, Chair, on the 21st or 24th of March, it was raised of the National Programming Committee. And the response that we provided is that the President, which I must say that it was presented before the Chiefs Forum, and it was explained and well understood by all parties, that it's fair enough what we are saying, that depending on the availability of the President, for now, what we have is that the President will be appearing in the House twice. He will be, in terms of his appearance in Q&As, in the next quarter, based on the availability, because there's a process. If then he opted to say that now I'm available within this quarter, we will endeavor to do that. However, all of us who are aware we're only left with 2 weeks, and through the due processes in terms of indication whether the President is not available or not, we have been very carefully presenting the program. And it was accepted by all from the clearing house, which I'll call it the Chiefs Forum, to this meeting here. And we have been listening to the Chief Whips Forum Council and also the Programming Committee Council to say that make sure that there are no below the lines compliance regulatory items and reports that are not scheduled for the House to consider, and we have been doing that. And our understanding is that the program of this second quarter, which is left with 2 weeks to be concluded, we have been doing that. However, Chair, we are not going to be dictate to the President when he's going to appear before the House, after he had indicated to us that his diary doesn't necessarily allow him, notwithstanding that he will be appearing this month or this quarter twice because of the compliance matters in terms of the budget votes that needs to be processed and be approved before the beginning of the financial year, as it were. So I just want to raise that, Chair, which is a silent matter, that we can't ignore it, that not to include it when we are presenting this draft report before the House. Because also I must say that, Chair, we have been very considerate. Actually, some of the motions of various political parties, in particular those ones who are not, who I will term them smaller parties based on their share of the votes that they received during elections, we have accommodated their motions in the mini plenaries so that also they do get a chance also to debate on their issues that they would like the House to debate on. We are doing endeavor to do our best and humanly possible, given the dates and the days that we have at our disposal, to schedule all items and important items in the business of the House. I here present the program of the draft program of the National Assembly, as it were, before your good self, Honorable Speaker and members. If there will be any clarities of other matters, I will request that through your permission that Mr. Kaso respond to that. The other one, Chair, probably before I sit down, although I'm seated where I am, is the one that we have received a letter from your good office where the member of the DA, I just don't have the letter on my disposal, I would have referred to his name, honorable member, requesting a debate on a matter of national importance. And you have requested the technical committee and the processing, and which we received yesterday after even the Chief Whips Forum. We will also look at the matter and see how best we schedule that one. However, after I've taken through the committee, this committee, the program, you would see that there's no space to maneuver to accommodate that. We will endeavor in the third quarter to be in the first item in terms of scheduling for that debate to take place, Chair. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Honorable Lisuma. Honorable members, that is the draft parliamentary program. Are there any matters of clarity? I see the hand of Honorable Kwahube, followed by Honorable Dr. Connie Mulder, and then the Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Speaker, and I do appreciate the difficult work of trying to condense everything, particularly in a term like this one where there are budget votes. But I do want to make a point of clarity, as was stated by Honorable Lisuma, that the appearance of the President in coming to the House does not pertain to him answering questions. The ruling question that she references from the NA rules talks about the President appearing before the House to answer questions from political parties once a quarter. It does not refer to an appearance in the House. So the fact that he's going to be in the House doing his budget vote and therefore replying does not negate the need for the President to have a question and answer session in the House every quarter. It is in the rules, and I think that the notion that somehow this was not raised, the reality is that we have to build these in. And the president's diary has to be taken into consideration, but ultimately this has to be built in every single term, that the president must come to the House. It's part of our oversight role, and it's part of his responsibility to Parliament. And so I do ask that consideration be given to my request that since this is a draft parliamentary program, that provision be made so that we can satisfy that rule in the NA rules. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kwahube. Honorable Dr. Mulder, followed by Honorable Ivambu.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Now, I've listened to the program and I've listened to what Honourable Lesuma has reported, and it's correct. I don't think under any circumstances should we compare different aspects of the parliamentary program with one another. It's not correct to say we've allowed certain parties to have the opportunity to discuss motions although they don't have many votes. Really, with all due respect, that is not what this is about. We are there to enforce the rules of the National Assembly, and the rules are quite clear that the Honourable President needs to attend the House and make himself available to answer questions once a quarter. Now, that has not happened, and it's not the responsibility of the opposition parties to make that happen. It's the responsibility of the people that plan the program to make that happen. So now we've got a problem. The President did not appear before Parliament in this quarter. We've got one or two options. Either we extend the sitting for another week. We sometimes do extend the sitting at the end of the year. We don't have a problem to do that. We either do that, or we need an assurance that the President will appear twice in the next quarter to make up for this. But we cannot just move away from that and say, well, we accept this or that or the other. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Honorable Dr. Mulder. Honorable Lichisa.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to say that at number 10, at the first part of the program, the international relations, I mentioned it in very specific terms, but as a general long-term planning requirement. There's an activity in August of the CPA International. And so they are often, as is the case with Canada, they require a 12-week application for visas. So the implications are that decisions politically must be made early on that we are going there, and therefore the individuals concerned can then initiate those processes, in fact, with the support of the administration. So it's a necessary recognition of the need to take decisions early so that we do not only fulfill the legal requirements for going into some of these countries, but also from a cost perspective. It often works out cheaper when we are able to make decisions for traveling early on in time, and so we can get the benefits of early cheap prices that are often available. I thought I should make that in the first part of the program that he raised on international visits. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Honorable Shivambu, followed by Honorable Kwagoba.
No, thank you very much, Speaker. I think it's entirely problematic for the honourable member to present it as if it's a discretion of the president to come and appear in Parliament. She even says, no, we cannot dictate on the president. It is not us who's dictating on the president, it's the rules of Parliament. The rules of Parliament are clear that a president must come and respond to questions once per quarter, and that must happen exactly as is. We took serious issue when President Zuma was in office, when it was even once per 6 months. I remember that period, and then we insisted that because he did not come the previous year, he must respond to questions during a SONA address. So we must not make that mistake of trying to hold this president with different standards because it's convenient for us. It's the rules. We're not dictating to any president. We have adopted rules as the National Assembly that guides us and the relationship with the executive. The appearance for the budget vote, even if he comes there for 7 days, it has got nothing to do with him coming to answer questions in Parliament. So that has to be scheduled within this quarter so that he comes to respond to questions that would have been posed by members of parliament. It's a non-negotiable. It's in the rules. It has to be implemented in that particular way. And then the other issue that I want to speak to is this international relations calendar to check in relation to the IPU event. If we are going to be participating, that is one. Whether it's hybrid or physical and everything else, I would advise that for the committee participation, it must be hybrid participation by the South African Parliament. But also to make a plea that perhaps, particularly from the ruling party's point of view, that in the same way we have got like permanent delegation or like identified delegation to the SADC Parliamentary Forum and to the Pan-African Parliament, perhaps to the IPU there must be consistent delegation that is decided upon, because when you keep on changing delegations to those platforms, some information falls on the cracks and there is no consistency, there is no memory of what are the issues that have to be taken up. And there are a lot of important issues at the continental and global level that needs some degree of consistency and focus. But if the delegations are kept on, they keep on changing, it then turns those visits into like holiday escapades, like where people are just going, like they've got no comprehension of what happened in the previous engagements. There's no memory and everything else. That is one component. But two, I think that there has to be a far much more meaningful reporting from all these institutions which we participate in, because it appears that we just go to the Pan-African Parliament, SADC Parliamentary Forum, to the Interparliamentary Union, and when we return, there is no platform to then say, let us deliberate on what did we do there, what were the issues, what are the areas that need further discussions and decision. Besides that, even if where necessity requires that you must change delegations, those who go have got a sense of what were South Africa's positions in the previous engagements. I think that a much more structured engagement with international platforms would be much more meaningful than the manner in which it is being handled now. Those are my submissions, Chair. But the emphasis, Speaker, is that the appearance of the President in Parliament is not his discretion, it's the rules of Parliament. It must happen as is outlined in the rules. It's not negotiated. It's not negotiable. You must come and appear to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Honorable Kwamkwa.
Speaker, thank you very much. I agree with Honorable Shivambu and Honorable Corney Mulder. We shouldn't be seen as a parliament that has double standards or that applies double standards. We were strict on President Zuma in the last term. There was even an instance where he could not appear in another term because of the budget vote scenario, where he had to compensate in the following term by appearing twice to answer questions. In instances where he did not come because of this challenge around budget votes, Honorable Shivambu is quite correct in saying he was then held to account using the SONA process. So we mustn't have a different set of rules for President Ramaphosa. It's important that we make time available, we schedule time in the program for him to come and answer questions in this term. If not, he must appear twice next term to compensate for the fact that he's not able to come now. Because we can't have a situation where, depending on who you are, we're not going to respect and follow and adhere to our rules. That would create all manner of problems, even for yourself, Speaker, as we try to manage the institution and to ensure that every member of Parliament, even those who have to come to Parliament to account in terms of the Constitution, respect our rules. The second issue, Speaker, is when it comes to this international IR program, I mean, we don't know. Sometimes some of us who are in smaller parties, we don't even know how this thing works anymore, because as far as I remember, I want to make an example. I was on the BRICS Parliamentary Forum. I was part of the team that established the Parliamentary Forum in Russia in 2015. But since then, I've received no correspondence whatsoever. And yet, according to my understanding, and the last time when we did these focus groups as smaller parties, I was put back on that on that focus group. So I think there needs to be clarity about how we constitute these delegations and open communication about what happens with this act. Because remember, the issue here, Speaker, is that all members of Parliament and all political parties should be able to get some form of exposure from the IR calendar and the work that we do internationally as Parliament. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kwankwa. I've noted that. Honorable Korenhoff, followed by Honorable Singh, and I would like us to move towards closure of this meeting, Honorable members, because it's overlapping with other meetings now. Thank you very much. Honorable Korenhoff.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, members, for the discussion. It's now a couple of weeks before the end of the current second term of Parliament. The NA program for the second term has been discussed and approved and agreed to in every single meeting since the end of March in this programming committee meeting. The same applies to the Chief Whips Forum since the end of March. And in every meeting of the programming committee and the Chief Whips Forum, the programming whip has explained the program in detail, including the questions to the President and the Deputy President. And she was supported in both forums. And I think we must defend, and I want to defend the programming whip. I find it very strange that the DA now writes a letter directly to the Speaker, ignoring the programming committee, ignoring the Chief Whips Forum, whilst they approved the NA program in every meeting since March 2022. I can assure you, Speaker, that the date for the President to reply to questions for oral questions in the National Assembly for the third term will be provided as normal to your good office. My last remark, if you look at the framework program of Parliament that was approved at the beginning of the year, in each of the terms, this first, the second, the third, and the fourth term, dates are indicated or notes are made for questions to the President and the Deputy President. Only in the second framework program, there was no mention of dates to the questions to the President. So I would appeal that the President will submit to your good office reply for questions for oral reply in the House in the third term. I don't think the rules make provision for two question sessions in one term. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Korenhoff. Honorable Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Suma, and you close the matter.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, after listening to all our colleagues, I think let's find a way of the President coming to the House in this term or twice in the next term. I think that will resolve the problem. We've done it before. It won't be precedent setting if we do it now. And I think let's stick to the rules of the House and make sure that we don't fall foul of it. So either now or in the next term twice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Singh. Honorable Lisuma.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Let me start with a point that I think probably the choice of words were not so kindly. When I was referring to the smaller parties in terms of scheduling their subject of debate in the mini plenary, I wanted to emphasize the point that each and every counselling suggestion or proposal made at the Chief Whips Forum or at this meeting, we make sure that we consider. I was not implying that it's because we have addressed that. I was just making a point, even when I said the issues that were below the line, we have done our level best to schedule them as directed or cancelled by the Chief Whips Forum in this meeting. Let's come then to the actual issue of the day. We hear what the members are saying, and also at no way we're
trying to say that the Rule 140 must not be applicable or must be ignored and treat other presidents differently from the others. We will, through your office normally and through the Honorable Dr. Korenhoff, negotiate the date with the president to say when can he be available, because the rules also say that he has to appear, but we must have the date where we are. We can't say on this day, but we must make sure that he has never refused to do that, Chair. We will come back to the Chiefs Forum and this forum, and I'm happy that the conclusion of majority of the members, they are saying if then the president is not available in this quarter, then in the third quarter, coming quarter, he has to, we will request to say that he has to compensate this quarter and appear 3 times in the third quarter. And I'm happy the way and the spirit that you are taking this issue. We shall do that and follow the due process accordingly. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Lisuma. I see hands here. I hope these are legacy hands because I'm not taking another speaker now. Honorable members, I've listened very attentively to all of you on the matter of the President's appearance to the chamber in terms of Section 140 of the rules. Honorable members, I do want to appeal to all of us that in view of the time and in view of the fact that the President will now be appearing before Parliament adjourns, before the 15th, will be appearing for 2 days, I would feel that we then propose that the President appears next quarter. We then have an additional day for him to appear so that he then answers questions, fields questions from members of Parliament. I would like us to consider this as an agreement amongst ourselves that in view of that he will not be here, then we are proposing that at the next quarter, Honorable Lisuma, that there will be an extra day where the President will come and answer questions. Is that agreed, Honorable members?
Agreed, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Morodo. Honorable Lisuma, you are quiet. Okay. Honorable members, I think that brings us to the end of our meeting, unless there are announcements to be made by us. So are there any announcements?
Honorable Speaker, my apology, my gadget has frozen a little bit. No, I agree and I take the counsel that he will be compensating in the third quarter. Thank you very much. My apology for my delay.
Thank you very much.
Speaker, but there are issues that were raised around international relations program, including questions of whether we are participating in the ones that are happening immediately, even if via virtual platforms, and whether these delegations that are sent elsewhere and all of those things. I thought that there should be guidance on that before we close the meeting.
I'm really sorry. No, Honorable Shibambo, on a matter which you have raised, which is very important, of consistency of delegations which are sent to some of this forum. I have raised the matter with the Chief Whip of the majority party that, for instance, with regards in the same way that you have with the CPA, that with the IPU, we request that there be consistency, because indeed, when we change delegations, like it happened in November, we had some members of Parliament, and then the following one, which was now in Bali recently, with a different set of people. It tends to complicate the situation, because the tendency at this forum is that there's continuation of debates and discussion on matters which had been discussed in previous meetings. So I have raised the matter with the Chief Whip, and I think the Honorable Chief Whip is considering the matter. And in this instance, I think for now, it is the ANC which has been changing people. There has been consistency on the side of the DA. There has also been consistency on the side of the EFF with regards to the IPU. I don't know about other delegations. I would have to look into that together with Honorable Paso and and with Mr. Kaso and Sitole from International Relations. So that's the one thing. Yes, there may be those, we'll look at the program, there will be those where we will participate if it is possible on a virtual platform. But to be honest, there are fora where you really need members to attend physically to those meetings. Otherwise, she will be doing shown and will not be able to advance position of the Republic of South Africa. So we will look into the matter and we will discuss with international relations and we will advise on the opinion. And then the last matter, Honorable Member, it seems we are all now agreeing that the President will come in the next quarter and will have an extra day so that he makes up for this quarter where he did not appear to answer questions. Any other matter? None, honorable members. I propose then that if there are no announcements, Mr. Kaso.
Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, the one announcement is that the mini plenaries are sitting this afternoon at 2 o'clock and it's virtual. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kaso. And I think maybe at the next meeting, this coming meeting of the programming committee, seeing that international matters have been raised, I may want to just take you through the issue because I represent you in the task force on the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. I may just, I will present a report to you because tomorrow will be the third meeting of the task force. And of course, the meetings are held virtually for now. And I think the meeting tomorrow is likely to prepare for an on-site visit to the two countries. I will then take you through that at some point because I do represent you as Parliament. Honorable Hope and Honorable Shivambu, you now have your hands and I'm closing the meeting. It is 10 to 11. Is there a new matter?
No, Speaker, I was saying you must be aware there is a minority view about Ukraine in
Of course.
So that minority view, when you present, we are going to confront that minority view on Ukraine in South Africa.
Honorable Papo, I just want to present to you work in progress, what it is that we are doing as the task force in trying to narrow the gap between the two parliaments, namely the Parliament of Russia and the Parliament of Ukraine. I think we can't avoid a discussion which is likely, we may not agree on the approach. So if we don't agree, then there's no agreement. But I think it is important that at least from my side, you are aware of work that's being done currently. Thank you very much, honorable members. Honorable members, the meeting stands adjourned until next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable
Thank you.
Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you.
Recording stopped.